There was a time in my life when my life as I had known it, I thought was truly over. Not in a dramatic sense, not in the sense that I didn't want to live anymore, but in the sense that I believed deeply that the life that I knew, the person I had been, and the future I had imagined for myself was no longer attainable, was no longer there. And if you've experienced psychotic depression like me, then you might know exactly what I'm talking about. My name is Joyce, and I am a lived experienced survivor of psychotic depression. I'm also a psychologist and an academic in mental health research and teaching. On this channel, I share my experience with psychotic depression, and I especially focus on the recovery and management in the aftermath of that experience. And one of the hardest parts of these experiences is, first of all, the incredible loneliness, and second of all, the loss of hope about one's future and about one's abilities and about one's recovery and management. And that's why I'm making this video. Because if you're in that place right now, or if you've been in that place before, I want you to know that there are people who understand. You're not alone. There are people who have gone through this experience and have come out the other side, who have either recovered, gone on the management journey of how to manage one's illness or vulnerability to a particular illness. And more importantly, I want you to know that recovery and management is possible, and that you can have a future that you feel fully excited about. And more importantly, I want you to know and feel that recovery and management is possible, and that you can have a future again that you feel excited about. Psychotic depression is one of the most isolating experiences I've experienced, and one of the most isolating experiences I can imagine even. Depression on its own can make you feel disconnected, isolated, completely alone from other people. Hey Lily, what are you doing there? Hi. Sorry about that. But when psychosis enters the picture, it takes it to a whole other level. And that isolation deepens in a way that's hard to explain. Because it isn't just sadness, it isn't just hopelessness. It's the terrifying experience of not being able to trust your mind. Your thoughts can feel frightening and depressing. Reality is distorted, often in very scary and distressing ways. And in its aftermath, it can feel like you've lost everything that you used to navigate your life with. For me, one of the hardest parts in recovery from psychotic depression was that loss of hope, both by myself, but also loss of hope from other people and their communication of that to me, either directly or indirectly. Psychotic, me? How had I ended up in this situation? I had never imagined something like this for myself. Could I ever trust my mind again? Would this keep happening? Would I still have a future worth living for? And this all was compounded by the fact that I didn't know anyone who had first-hand experience with psychotic depression, right? So I felt very lonely, very isolated. And I didn't really have any examples of recovery or management either. And that kind of loneliness, that kind of despair is hard to put in words. And I just want you to know that if you felt that loneliness, if you felt that despair, it makes sense, but you don't have to stay there. In the early stages of my recovery, it felt like my future had disappeared before my eyes. Things that I had hoped or imagined in my future all of a sudden no longer seemed attainable to me. And I really worried about what the future would hold for me after this experience. And I could see that worry in other people's eyes as well. My loved ones, but also the health professionals around me. And there were genuinely moments that I felt and feared that I would never come back from this experience, that I would never rise above it, that this wasn't a chapter. The main dread was that this experience would be the end of the person that I knew myself to be. And that belief for a while felt absolutely real, felt absolutely justified. And that's what makes depression, as well as psychosis, as well as stigma, so frightening. the absolute reality. It doesn't feel like things maybe will get better. It feels like an absolute certainty at times that things will stay the way they are. Certainty that you're broken beyond repair. Certainty that hope is gone. Certainty that the future as you imagined it is no longer available to you. And certainty that this is forever. And I know there are people out there at this point in time who may be feeling that same dread, that same isolation, that same hopelessness in the early stages of recovery and management. Maybe you're wondering whether your life will ever be yours again. Maybe you're scared that the damage is permanent. Maybe you're wondering why nobody around you seems to understand the kind of suffering that you're going through. And if that's where you're at, know that I have been there too, and many other people with me. You're not alone, you're not weird. You're part of, I guess, an unlucky group in a sense, with a vulnerability to more psychotic depression. And this is one of the challenges you will have to navigate in your lifetime. But it can be done. Management and recovery for me did not happen in one major breakthrough moment or anything like that. It happened slowly. There were very few big moments, but more gradual, small baby steps with lots of setbacks again as well. And I think that's important to mention because when we talk about recovery, when we talk about management, we often talk with the end goal in mind. We talk about things like getting better or having some kind of control or predictive power over our symptoms and our relapses. But when you're in the early stages of recovery and management, getting better can feel incredibly far away. So instead of focusing on the end point, what I learned was to notice the small signals that I was taking a baby step forward. A moment of relief, for example. A moment of connection and hope inspired by an article written by someone with lived experience. Stumbling on a small but powerful community on Instagram of people blogging or posting pictures about their journey, and the moment where the darkness, however slightly, eases a bit. I learned to see those moments as evidence that my mind was not irretrievably damaged. And I know yours isn't either. If you're in a difficult place right now, your thoughts might be telling you that this will never end. Your mind may convince you that you're too broken. And it might feel like no one can possibly understand what this experience is like for you. But what you're experiencing right now is not the entire story of your life. It's one snapshot. Even if it feels permanent, even if it feels endless, even if your mind tells you otherwise. That doesn't mean recovery or management of psychosis or depression is easy or without setbacks. It doesn't mean the journey is quick, but it does mean this. There is more ahead than what you can currently see. And there is definitely more ahead than what stigma tells you. The reason that I share this is because I remember very vividly how isolating, how much despair that time and that situation, that experience created in me. And if my words can only help one person feel a little bit less alone or feel a little bit less hopeless about their possibility for recovery or management, then it is worth it to me to share my personal experience publicly. And if this message reaches you today, I would love for you to stay connected. And you can subscribe to this channel if you would like to. I will keep sharing honest information and experiences about my recovery and management of psychotic depression and about hope in that journey. Thank you for being here.